Will we start? Is everyone ready? I welcome you to this edition of Kalam. The people on stage really do not need an introduction. I cannot say anything about Shabana ji, which will actually be a, which will extend the frontier for you. Javed saab, similar, ditto. Sumantra saab, कि मैं ये कहूँगा, translator, author, filmmaker, and related to the works of Kaifi Azmi, Jan Nisar Akhtar. It's something that will strike you as relevant here. एक मैं आपको एक background दे दूँ, backdrop दे दूँ इस talk show का, and that is 3 words are important: Progressive Writers Movement, Progressive Writers Association, PWA. Why this 9-decade institution or 9-decade concept or idea is relevant for your life is आप जो कलाम आज गुनगुनाते हैं, आज आप कलाम जो गाते हैं, वो शायद एक Progressive Writers Association के member ने लिखा, and that's how your generations 50 years down the road, 100 years down the road will continue to hum. The movement of the Progressive Writers Association of the mid-30s has been described on the internet in very surprising terms, and I think it's important for you to just drop your phones and listen to this. It's been described as the most important movement since Sir Syed Ahmad Khan's education movement. Debatable, but ऐसे exalted अल्फाज में description हो तो यहाँ के जो हाज़रीन मौजूद हैं, it's important because their parents have played an important role in the Progressive Writers Association, and I would say that इनका इस्तकबाल शबाना जी का, जावेद साहब का, सुमंत्र साहब का मैं इस अंदाज से करूँगा कि इनके वालिदैन ने जो कुर्बानियाँ और जिनके वालिदैन ने जो कंट्रीब्यूशन दिया है हमारे ज़ुबान को, it's something that has enriched this nation and will continue to show the road forward for the next 100, 200, 500 years.
Thank you very much for that. And you notice that as you were saying that, my mic fell. So the thud was as appreciation of what you were saying.
I'm extremely grateful for your pointing this out to me. Pehla sawal, normally one would have gone to Shabana ji to be the Tendulkar of the innings, but I'm going to invite Sumantra sahab. And I'm going to, ये किताब जो है, मेरे हाथ में एक किताब है, दायरा धनक, Translation of the works of Kaifi Azmi and Jan Nisar Akhtar. और इसमें एक जो वॉल्यूम है वो सुमंत्र साहब ने ट्रांसलेट किया है, एंड इज ऑल्सो मेड अ फिल्म कॉल्ड कैफी नामा, करेक्ट?
जी बिल्कुल.
मुझे ये पूछना है कि जो किताब है, और दिस इज काइंड ऑफ अ सॉफ्ट लॉन्च, इज काइंड ऑफ अ हार्ड लॉन्च फॉर दिस बुक, एंड विच इज़ व्हाट द पर्सनैलिटीज ऑन स्टेज विल बी टॉकिंग अबाउट. सो मेरा सवाल सुमंत्र साहब से यही है कि जान निसार साहब को गुजरे हुए करीबन 46 साल हो गए, कैफी साहब को करीबन 20 से ज़्यादा साल हो गए. Why did it take so long for these books to be translated and then combined into one pack to be introduced to an audience of today, 2023?
I'm hardly the person to answer that, since I'm a translator on hire basically, and very accidental.
That also for free, huh? So hire was for free.
Well, Bengalis have a reputation for that. But
I respond to that.
But the reason that it's, I think, taken so long is that the people who are in charge of doing the job, they're sitting on either side of me, were so busy with their own work and writing their own poems and creating their own histories that their parents took a bit of a back seat until they decided that it was time. And well, the important thing is it's here and it's available, and they're here to answer these sorts of incisive questions.
So before I move on to the usual suspects with their round of questions, I must ask you, what were the challenges that you faced in translating a work like this?
There was one very simple challenge, and that is that I don't know Urdu. So that was a fairly sort of...
Did you use Google Translate?
No, I use Javed Translate. It's a much better app.
Is it an effect? Is it free downloadable?
No, because it's available only irregularly. But that's exactly how it happened. Shabana, when she wanted to make a film on her father and had the entire film industry on their knees begging to do it, decided that she would come to an out-of-work, middle-aged Bengali man who didn't know anything about the time, the period, the poetry. And, well, we're still sitting together, so I suppose I've done a decent enough job. And Javed Saab, of course, who has the whole of the Urdu world at his behest, also decided that when it came to his father, he would turn to me. I'm incredibly grateful for that honor, because being with the two of them is its own joy and its own reward, apart from rather decent lunches that you get at their house. Yes, I think the translation happened because Javed Saab put me right every time I went wrong. And I tried to do what I could with whatever I knew of the language that the words were going to be read in as well, because this is in three sort of versions.
Very brief question to you. Was it an advantage not knowing the language inside out and not having possibly been exposed to the nuances of the language? You could actually approach it from an absolutely virgin, fresh and unexposed perspective?
That's a new aspect on illiteracy. But however, yes, I believe that what I could do as a result of my lack of, or my naivety or whatever it is I could do one of the things that I thought was lacking in translation, if I may say so.
Which is what?
Then I shall fall silent. Very often when I read translations, they don't seem like poems. So I'm sort of guessing at the worth of the original poet by reading only content, but not poetry, very often. And one of the things I felt free to do because of this lack of being trammeled by the syntax of Urdu, all the huge knowledge that other people had as translators, is I was free to do my thing, to use a strange sort of
walk
phrase.
The road less traveled, possibly.
Well, I mean, the people who will read the poems will decide for themselves whether that road should have been less traveled. So that allowed me to at least try and turn poems into poems, which could be read as poetry as well. And he sort of ensured that I didn't go too badly wrong, I think. So I think it's really a combination of Javed Saab and me that resulted in whatever you read in this book. So he's as much to blame.
जावेद साहब, आपका वही सवाल है कि 40 साल लगे वालिद साहब की पोएम्स को, नज़्म को यहाँ तक लाने के लिए?
देखिए, अगर नज़्में लाने के लिए सिर्फ आपके घर वाले बचे हों तो फिर कुछ गड़बड़ है. फैक्ट ये है कि इट्स नॉट ट्रू दैट दीज पोएम्स और दिस पोइट्री वाज नॉट ट्रांसलेटेड अर्लियर. कैफी साहब, लॉट ऑफ पोइट्री वाज ट्रांसलेटेड विद इन हिज लाइफ ऑल्सो. So this is unique because one that we have selected. I have selected 25 poems of Kaifi Azmi, and Shabana has selected 25 poems of Jan Nisar. Their poetry was translated earlier by different people, but not this way. And besides that, we have been very fortunate to find Sumantra Saab, who is really a very, very good translator. I keep on suggesting that you should drop everything and make this as your full-time job. And you should translate a lot of Urdu poetry because he really does justice to it. As far as you mentioned that it is not his first language or even the third. But why? Perhaps that makes him a very good translator. You know, they say familiarity breeds contempt. It may not breed contempt, but it definitely breeds indifference. I have noticed that if it is your mother tongue, you don't look at the words with that curiosity and that interest, and you don't feel the phonetics of the word because you have been hearing it right from your childhood as somebody who has come from outside. And the outsider in any language, like any language which is not like Bengali. Bengali, I don't know Bengali. But the kind of music it gives me, I don't think it can give to somebody who is a Bengali. Because he is hearing Bengali speaking Bengali all the time. But when I listen to Bengali, I hear the sound. I can hear that music, which perhaps most of you will not. Because it's there, it's all the time there. And you are living with it. So the sensitivity that Sumantra Sahab has towards the words, individual words, could come and could be only in somebody who is not from Urdu discipline. And but then at the same time you have to have some expertise or some mastery of some other language where you are translating. That he has. So I think anybody who would have been a Urdu speaking person or a scholar of Urdu, I don't think he would have been translate these poems as sensitively as he has done.
You know, to elaborate Javed Saab's point further, in fact, it used to happen between my father and me that एक तो he'd say this beautiful thing कि एक नज़्म हो गई है, सुनोगी, हो गई है मतलब जैसे वहाँ से, हाँ, वहाँ से बस उन्होंने ड्रॉप करके और उनका आ गई. He never said एक नज़्म लिखी है, एक नज़्म हो गई है, सुनोगी. तो मैं कहती थी, of course. तो फिर जब वो सुनाते थे, you know, if I objected to any word, he would immediately drop.
Do you remember any word that you may have objected to?
Yeah, but I don't want to discuss it here. I remember very clearly. लेकिन मैं अगर इतराज़ करती थी तो he would immediately drop it and he would exchange the word. And I would always say him, why do you do that? Just to make me happy because I'm your daughter? So he said, you know that I don't know Urdu well enough to be critical of your work, for instance. He said, no, but you're the audience. And if phonetically some word is disturbing you, it will disturb the reader. And that's why I do it. So I exactly understand what Javed Saab is saying about Sumantra.
So beyond content to phonetics, which is anyway the preserve of Urdu. Urdu sounds very good, mellifluous.
कहाँ सुनने को मिलती है अब खूबसूरत और खामोशी और हाँ तो बिल्कुल चला ही गया. जो लोग जावेद को सही बोलना चाहते हैं वो कहते हैं जावेद वो समझते हैं वो कहीं भी आप लगा दें जावेद साहब जी.
There's a lovely word that you brought up in your editorial introduction. It's niswaniyat, and I'm going to come back to that a little later. But you know, I haven't really got the answer to the question that I asked you. 40 saal lage. Do you think that Jan Nisar Akhtar as a literary phenomenon, as a poetic phenomenon, has been under-researched, under-analyzed?
Yeah, maybe. To some extent, yes. And it happens, but it doesn't matter. Because there are some people who are understated anyway. Their poetry is also gentle and जिसे कहते हैं धीमी आंच पे पकी हुई शायरी.
क्या बात है?
तो वो जो होती है it takes a little time. कोई भी चीज़ like a good wine, it takes a little time to take hold of you. तो इसी तरह से जब gently कोई बात बहुत understated बात कही गई हो, softly कही गई हो, it takes a little time. So it doesn't matter. Ultimately, literature में दूध का दूध पानी का पानी हो जाता है. जहाँ हम देखते हैं कि in their own time there have been many poets who did not get their due, but ultimately people realized, ultimately they got their place. So जो जहाँ deserve करता है वो ultimately पहुँच जाता है. Time is the best judge, and it's very fair. कभी कभी हुआ है, आप look back in 20th century or maybe even before that, there have been poets who were so popular, and now today nobody knows even their names. उनकी पोइट्री किसी को याद भी नहीं है, मगर वो हंगामा कर देते थे. एक दिल लखनवी थे, आपने कभी नाम सुना होगा. ऐसे अजीब अजीब तरह के शायर पहले भी हुए हैं, मगर उससे कुछ नहीं होता. उससे हमें कभी फिक्र नहीं करनी चाहिए. दिस इज़ द डिफरेंस बिटवीन द कमर्शियल वर्ड एंड लिटरेरी वर्ड. इन लिटरेरी वर्ड यू मे नॉट गेट instant gratification, but doesn't matter. If there is some quality in your work, there is some standard, some aesthetics worth taking note of, it will be.
आपने understated के बारे में कहा था. The poetry is very understated. कोई ऐसा उदाहरण देंगे, ऐसा कोई आप एग्जाम्पल देंगे, ऑडियंस के जहन में ये बात उतर जाए कि इतनी अंडरस्टेटेड थी कि बस बहुत ही एलिगेंटली बात कह के निकल गए.
आपको एक शेर सुना देता हूँ. चलिए, हालांकि मैं यहाँ कैफ़ी साहब के लिए आया हूँ, मैं अपने फादर के लिए नहीं आया, वो जिम्मेदारी इनकी है. लेकिन मैं अब आप इतना कह रहे हैं तो कहीं पूरी तरह बात खुल ना जाए मेरे उनके रिश्ते की, इसलिए मैं थोड़ा सा बोलना पड़ेगा. दिल को हर लम्हा बचाते रहे जज्बात से हम, दिल को हर लम्हा बचाते रहे जज्बात से हम, इतने मजबूर रहे हैं कभी हालात से हम।
क्या बात है, वाह वाह, खूबसूरत।
इंटरेस्टिंग। शबाना जी, आपके लिए सवाल है,
जी।
वो ये है, Progressive Writers Association, they stood for certain ideals. One of the ideals that they stood for was celebrating the working class. This other ethic that they stood for was deep commitment to the secular India. It appears that possibly उनका जो काम था वो आज देखा जा रहा है is irrelevant because both these bastions are under threat. The world of automation has virtually removed workers from so many fields, and secularism, I wouldn't want to drag that and drive the point hard, but just to say that possibly PWA का जो काम था वो आज irrelevant सा देखा जा रहा है. Do you agree?
देखिए जावेद साहब इसका बहुत अच्छा जवाब देते हैं, तो I'll steal the idea from him. There has been some criticism of the progressive writers movement, and it's said that poetry should not have a goal which you preach. It should be above politics, and then it is real poetry. And Javed Sahab says, I wish it was so. I wish it was so that the ideas that the progressive writers talked about would have become irrelevant. That would mean that society has moved forward. But that hasn't happened in the last 70 years, and that's the pity. And today, more than ever, I think the work that the progressive writers did, we need to revisit it, celebrate it, and understand its importance in the times that we are living, both about secularism and about the worker. And as you say, that the worker is being disenfranchised. Where is he to go? What is happening to him? What are we thinking about him? My introduction to the worker was when I was 4 or 5 years old, and my father would take me amongst the mazdoors of Madanpura, the construction laborers. My mother was a full-time actress, theatre actress, and she would go away very often for her tours. And so my father would take me to Madanpura, and all the people over there would make me stride on their shoulders and take me from one place to the other. And I'd see all these red flags, and I used to think, red flag was a symbol for a party, because that's what would happen. I'd go and there'd be a huge big party. So it was something that I completely grew up with. It was something that I took for granted. It was something that it was a given for me. And it was only when I grew much older that I realized that the ideas, particularly of pluralism, of secularism, about women's rights, everything that I had taken for granted as a child were in fact the exception rather than the rule. I consider myself very, very fortunate to have been brought up in a home where we had poets like Josh Malihabadi, Firaq Gorakhpuri, Faiz Ahmad Faiz as house guests. They used to come and stay in my parents' little cottage, which didn't even have an attached bathroom. And yet there was something in that house that was available to them that they wouldn't get in a 5-star hotel. And that, for me, my whole love for Urdu and for the movement came because I was exposed to it as a child.
So I'm going to ask both of you a provocative question, and that is, do you as a couple see yourself as possibly the last link with a dramatic movement which is the Progressive Writers Association? Today there would be hardly anyone around.
That would be a very sorry state of affairs. I think that that's not entirely true. We happen to be fortunate to be in the limelight, and that's why the work that we do, it comes to people's notice more. But to say that progressive writers' work is finished, then we haven't been reading the young Urdu poets that are available in the subcontinent, not just in India, but also in Pakistan. So I hope that's not true.
Do you then see this book as the right product at the right time?
I don't know. I'm not sure of that. Maybe if people appreciate the book, read it, fine. But I don't feel that we are the last people.
उस लिंक के साथ
नहीं, उस लिंक के साथ, you see, we are two persons who were born in those families. We were brought up in that circle of Urdu progressive writers, whether prose writers or poetry, Ismat Chughtai or Krishna Chandra or Sada Jafri or Majaz or anybody. Yes, we knew all of them personally. We are related to some of them and so on. But it doesn't mean that out of this immediate family or this clan, there is nobody is bothered about poetry or progressive poetry. You go to any small city of North India and you will find some young people who know this literature, who have by heart these poems, they can recite the poems, and they care for these values. Otherwise, if only 2% are left who care for these poems, then why these people are sitting here? It's not true. But this idea and this point of view and this approach, which is called progressive writers movement, is not dead. It's there, and it is fortunately in young people. No thanks to us, actually. They have found this on their own. So
Sumantra sir, I need to pick up the cue from there and ask you, why are these
I just want
books
to answer this as well from the outside, since I'm not part of the lineage, let's say. First of all, the progressive writers movement were not restricted to Urdu, to start with. And therefore, the gharana is larger than just this language. But quite apart from the fact, I think that if the progressive movement was restricted to a bloodline or to lineage, then it would die out. But because it stood for ideas,
it's a concept.
It was not just a concept, but it was, I think, a shared vision. There was not just a concept, but there was an idea that people were writing towards and for. And I think that vision might get diluted, might change, but it would be impossible to remain human and not share in that vision. Because it was a vision to do wholly with, it may have had aberrations and it may have had problems in trying to achieve that vision, but the vision by itself is something that was very pure and something that was for the good and for equality and for emancipation. And how can you give up these ideas? How can you say that these two ideas, or all these ideas, can only live in the lives of a few who are alive? They will live on and they will find other children.
And I think progressive ideas and all that the progressive writers movement wanted, that desire is still in writers and they express it. But the fact is that the metaphor has changed, the language has changed, the style of communication has changed. It is not beating the pulpit. They say certain things in a very roundabout way. They just give a hint and you can understand what they are talking about. Now I'll give you one couplet. ये एक बहुत ही young poet ने लिखा है, must be in early 20s. अब ये देखिए, ये एक दो लाइनें जो हैं, ये एक पूरे फ्यूडल सिस्टम को जो आज भी हमारे रूरल इंडिया में ज़िंदा है और दूसरी जगहों पे और भी ज़्यादा होगा, वो कैसे कैप्चर कर रहा है without giving a speech, without beating the pulpit. आपका काम हो गया साहब, ये गज़ल का शेर है, ज़रा सोचिए गज़ल में ऐसा शेर, आपका काम हो गया साहब, लाश दरिया में फेंक दी मैंने. Now what does it tell you? You make a story. Try to make a story what had happened before this sher. And you will know about the injustice, lawlessness, the privilege of the powerful, the repression. Everything will come. लाश दरिया में फेंक दी मैंने, that's the end of the story. ख़त्म हो गई बात. आपका काम हो गया साहब, लाश दरिया में फेंक दी मैंने. So that is how they are communicating. कोई ज़रूरी नहीं कि जैसे हमारे पेरेंट्स ने या इससे पहले सीनियर पोइट्स ने जैसे कम्युनिकेट की थी बात, वो वैसे ही करें. Today the style has changed, but the concerns are the same.
So Sumantra sir, which part of the translation did you find the most moving?
I always find a personal connection moving. And therefore, because a lot of what is written or what was written by the progressives at a time was focused on the time as well. Some of it became universal, some of it didn't become universal. But a lot of the personal engagement, both with love as well as with society, if within that the personal shone through, I like that. And that speaks to me still. Without a necessarily reference to context, without knowledge of history, it speaks because the words are talking to your soul, are talking to your heart. And any poems that do that certainly do touch me. And
any
there are many
specific
such.
lines that you recall?
I'm not like Javed Sahab, where, at the drop of a hat, a whole literature unfolds. But if I think we will be reading from, and I think at that point we will be able to, answer that question, I hope.
Shabana ji, what about you? Anything specific that would have connected you to Jan Nisar Akhtar, your father-in-law? Any kalam that you would have found interesting? Because you edited that document.
More appreciation.
The thing is that I find Jan Nisar Akhtar's poetry very, very pretty, very endearing. And what I find special about him is his relationship with women. Because the progressive writers were used to exhorting their women to stand up and march shoulder to shoulder with them. I mean, whether it was Majaz or Kaifi. And you had Jan Nisar also, and of course Majaz before that. But in spite of that, Jan Nisar Akhtar was, in his relationship with women, he was coaxing, he was cajoling, he was the lover who was teasing his beloved. He was not the leader only talking to the women to rise up. That I like very much. And another thing that you'll notice is in Urdu poetry, at that point, you had reams and reams of poems on a woman's beauty as a beloved, but none after she had got married. Nobody has watched the woman's domesticity in such detail and with so much care. That I find very, very attractive. इसलिए मैं कहती हूँ कि उनकी औरत के लिए उनकी जो नज़र थी और जिस बारीकी से वो देखते थे, his imagery was so beautiful. Every time I talk about it, I get goose flesh. We'll be reading some quatrains, qatat from it, and you'll know exactly what I mean. So on the one hand, he was a member of the Communist Party. He went underground like my father. He had no money like my father. On the other hand, he was also this flirtatious, vivacious person, and that's why he had so many women falling for him. Unfortunately, I share that with my husband. मेरे साथ भी कुछ ऐसा ही होता है.
You actually described it in 2 words and very beautifully, I thought. He was a daughter's father. Can you elaborate on that? I think it's a very beautiful description.
Whether it was with the progressives, whether it was with Faiz Ahmed Faiz and his daughters, or Jan Nisar Akhtar and his daughter Unaiza, and of course also Albina, or my father with me, there are fathers who are fathers of sons, and there are fathers who are fathers of daughters. And I think mostly with writers and with poets, there is this special affinity with their daughter. So they want to protect her. They want her to be completely secure. But on the other hand, they're also asking her to rise and be free and wish for her that she should be able to make her own decisions. That relationship, I think, between a father and a daughter is so precious, and it's so precious, and I'm sure it happens not only just with the poets, it happens with many others, but that's what I find, that he was a father's daughter.
His daughter's father.
Daughter's father, sorry.
Javed Sahab, what did you find endearing about Kaifi Sahab's poetry? That one specific dimension of his poetry which you think is memorable,
he is
everlasting?
not one-dimensional. I have selected 2 poems today to recite, and that will tell you what was his range. On one hand, he is a hardcore revolutionary, and he has written revolutionary poems. And on the other hand, his love poems are deeply romantic. So this is the range, and there have been different topics which he has touched, but the extreme revolutionary and extreme romantic poem, that is what I want to read, so you'll know that how much canvas or span he covers.
कुछ आप पढ़ना चाहेंगे?
जी हाँ, ज़रूर, आप कहें मैं भी पढ़ देता हूँ।
इजाज़त है? मैं पकड़ लेता हूँ, फिर ये नीचे चला जाएगा।
नहीं,
I've got a copy. Can I give you a copy? Can I give you?
Thank you.
देखिए, जनरली इट इज़ सेड एंड जनरली इट इज़ ट्रू कि पोएट्स के जो कहते हैं और जो करते हैं उसमें बहुत डिफरेंस होता है। कथनी और करनी उसे बोलते हैं, उनकी कथनी में और करनी में बड़ा डिफरेंस, और होना भी चाहिए, इट्स टोटली अंडरस्टैंडेबल, बिकॉज देयर कथनी इज़ सो गुड दैट इट इज़ वेरी डिफिकल्ट टू फॉर करनी टू रीच दैट लेवल, इट्स वेरी डिफिकल्ट। बट एनीबडी हु हैज सेड दैट परहैप्स हैड नॉट मेट कैफ़ी साहब। कैफ़ी साहब did not only write, he lived his writings. He wrote about Mazdoors, he lived with them, worked with them. About farmers, he lived with them and worked with them. He wrote about women empowerment. You can see an example sitting there. So he wrote about secularism. For him, secularism was not a slogan, it was a way of life. And that is how he lived all his life. There was a time when he was a full-time activist among the construction workers in Bombay. ये भी एक बहुत बड़ा रैकेट है। होता क्या है कि they bring workers from the village, and these workers live at the site, they make the building, and after that they are removed. Now they have no place to go and they start sleeping on the pavement, trying to look for another job and so on. And again they bring some people, because that is cheap labor. He has lived with those people and he has fought for their rights. Makan is a poem that he had written during that time. आज की रात बहुत गर्म हवा चलती है, आज की रात न फुटपाथ पे नींद आएगी, सब उठो मैं भी उठूं, तुम भी उठो, तुम भी उठो, कोई खिड़की इसी दीवार में खुल जाएगी। ये ज़मीं तब भी निगल लेने पे आमादा थी, पाँव जब टूटती शाखों से उतारे हमने। इन मकानों को खबर है न मकीनों को खबर, उन दिनों की जो गुफाओं में गुजारे हमने। हाथ ढलते गए सांचे में तो थकते कैसे, नक्श के बाद नए नक्श निखारे हमने। कि ये दीवार बुलंद और बुलंद और बुलंद, बामुदर और ज़रा और संवारे हमने। हाउ ह्यूमन सोसाइटी प्रोग्रेस्ड। आंधियाँ तोड़ लिया करती थीं शम्मों की लबें, जड़ दिए इसलिए बिजली के सितारे हमने। बन गया कसर पैलेस तो पहरे पे कोई बैठ गया, सो रहे खाक पे हम शोरिश तामीर लिए। अपनी नस-नस में लिए मेहनत पहम की थकन, बंद आँखों में उसी कसर की तस्वीर लिए। दिन पिघलता है उसी तरह सरों पर अब तक, रात आँखों में खटकती है स्याह तीर लिए। आज की रात बहुत गर्म हवा चलती है, आज की रात न फुटपाथ पे नींद आएगी। सब उठो मैं भी उठूँ, तुम भी उठो, तुम भी उठो, कोई खिड़की इसी दीवार में खुल जाए।
क्या बात है, वाह वाह। मैं इसकी ट्रांसलेशन सुना दूं? तो these translations of Kaifi's poetry have been done by Mir Ali Hussain, who is a teacher at New York State University, and he is also, along with his brother, he has written extensively about the progressive writers movement, and he's written particularly a very good book called Poems of Resistance. So it was a very simple choice that we would ask him, and I must say that he is very faithful to the translation, and he translates very quickly, unlike the person on my left. तो मकान इतनी ज़्यादा मुश्किल ज़बान में तो नहीं थी, लेकिन अगर आप चाहें तो मैं उसकी अंग्रेज़ी ट्रांसलेशन पढ़ दूँ.
पढ़िए.
The building. Tonight a hot wind is blowing. Tonight it will be impossible to sleep on the pavement. Arise everyone, me and you, and a window will open in this very wall. This earth was ready to swallow us even then, back when we first descended from the trees. Neither these buildings nor their residents know anything of the days we spent living in caves. How could our hands tire, having become instruments of creation? We produced design after beautiful design. We built these walls higher, higher, and yet higher. Embellished the walls and the doors even more and more. Storms used to snuff out the flames of our lamps, and so we stuck electric stars in the sky. But once the palace was built, it was taken over while we slept in the dirt with nothing but the passion of our craft, bearing this exhaustion of ceaseless labor in every vein, holding the image of that palace in our dreams. The day still melts on our hearts like before. The night still pricks our eyes with its black arrows like before. Tonight, a hot wind is blowing. Tonight, it will be impossible to sleep on the pavement. Arise, everyone, me and you, and a window will open in this very wall. So this window that he's talking about opening in the wall is not just for the laborers. It's for everybody who is fighting injustice in any capacity. And that's why it continues to be relevant even today, because when you look at the irony of the construction worker who has built this beautiful palace or this beautiful building, and with his sweat and his blood, and then once it's completed, that very worker is not allowed to enter into the building that he has created, because a chowkidar is put there and he is told, no, you can't enter. Now we are seeing even today so many examples of that kind of injustice, and so that's why it continues to be relevant.
I need to ask you an intermediary question, and that is, you have edited the book on Jan Nisar Akhtar, and आपने कैफी साहब की किताब को edit किया. What was the reason for the switch?
Because I think we are both so close to the poetry, and then you remember many other things, not just the poems, when it was written, how it was written, all these things. So I think we needed just that little
distance,
but also great amount of affection.
Sorry, I'm interrupting you. वैसे भी खूबसूरत बात यही लगती है, वरना दोनों अपने अपने बाप की तारीफ कर रहे हैं, तो अच्छा नहीं लगता ना. If you are praising your father-in-law, then it's all right. भाई उन्होंने कहा मेरे बाप बहुत अच्छे थे, वो कह रहे हैं मेरे बाप बहुत अच्छे. It's not proper. Don't you think so?
I completely. In the interest of domestic peace, I think this is a suitable.
वैसे भी aesthetically ये बेहतर है.
मैंने एक और चीज़ नोटिस किया, वो ये है कि उर्दू ज़बान में भी इस बार आपने कैरी दी, एंड आई थिंक दैट्स अ वेरी रिफ्रेशिंग चेंज, क्योंकि देवनागरी होती है या अंग्रेजी होता है. पहली बार मैंने उर्दू ज़बान को इन सम ईयर्स आई हैव सीन दैट included as part of the text.
Yeah.
Well, I have included Urdu Zaban in all my books where there are many other languages like Urdu, English and Hindi, or Bengali and Urdu and English, so on. So every time I have kept the original as it is, and that should be there.
नज़्म को इंक्लूड किया, गज़ल को नहीं, क्यों?
देखिए, अब ये एक बड़ा लंबा डिस्कशन है, इस पर भी कर लेंगे बात आपसे, और मैं इसके बाद यही करूँगा. लेकिन मैं पहले एक नज़्म सुनाना चाहता हूँ, इससे पहले कि मकान आपके
खाली न जाए,
ख्याल में थोड़ा सा धुंधला हो जाए, ये नज़म का तासुर, इफ़ेक्ट, दैट विल टेल यू द रेंज ऑफ द पोएट. Now, आपने मकान सुनी, and between मकान and the poem that I'm going to recite, obviously there is a lot of space, and that is filled by his other poems in different shades. But I wanted to tell you the extremes. So now this is another extreme. This is a long poem, Andeshe, but I'll recite 3 or 4 stanzas of this poem. अब आपको बता दिया तो आप कह रही हैं, नहीं बताया होता तो आराम से सुना देता. हाँ चलिए ठीक है. रूह बेचैन है, एक दिल की अज़ियत क्या है, दिली शोला है तो ये सोज़े मोहब्बत क्या है, वो मुझे भूल गई इसकी शिकायत क्या है, रंज तो ये है कि रो रो के भुलाया होगा. दिल ने कुछ ऐसे भी अफसाने सुनाए होंगे, अश्क आँखों ने पिए और न बहाए होंगे, बंद कमरे में जो ख़त मेरे जलाए होंगे, एक एक हर्फ जबीं पर उभर आया होगा. उसने घबरा के नज़र लाख बचाई होगी, मिट के एक नक्श से 100 शक्ल दिखाई होगी, मेज़ से जब मेरी तस्वीर हटाई होगी, हर तरफ मुझको तड़पता हुआ पाया होगा. जुल्फ़ बेमहल छेड़ पे जज्बात उबल आए होंगे, गम पशेमान तबस्सुम में ढलाए होंगे, नाम पर जब मेरे आंसू निकल आए होंगे, सर न कांधे से सहेली के उठाया होगा. जुल्फ़ ज़िद करके किसी ने जो बनाई होगी, रूठे जलवों पे ख़ज़ां और भी छाई होगी, बर्क़ अशों ने कई दिन न गिराई होगी, रंग चेहरे पे कई रोज़ न आया होगा, हो के मजबूर मुझे उसने बुलाया होगा. अब आप ये देखिए, ये दोनों पोएम्स एक शायर की ये है. तो दिस इज़ द कैनवस, ह्यूज कैनवस, and obviously between these 2 poems there are so many about even women empowerment. औरत, that is an iconic poem. औरत हो या कम्युनलिज्म पे के अगेंस्ट पोएम्स हों, या पेट्रियाटिक पोएम्स हों, या दूसरे कंसर्न्स हों, रिलीजियोसिटी के ख़िलाफ़, सुपरस्टिशन के ख़िलाफ़ पोएम्स हों. ही हैड रिटन अ पोएम जिसकी वजह से तो उनको डेथ थ्रेट हो गए थे, एंड देयर वाज गवर्नमेंट of Maharashtra gave him security and so on and so forth, because he had written a poem against different religious superstitions. So कहाँ ये और कहाँ ये romance. तो ये सब चीज़ें, that shows his canvas, his large, what is the right word, Shabana? Canvas. चलो again, allow me to use this word again. Thank you.
एक गुजारिश मेरी ये है कि आप औरत सुनाएं हाजरीन को.
औरत भी, और इस बार मैं इनको नहीं बताऊंगा कि मैं कुछ स्टैंजा सुना रहा. आप खुश ना हैं? अभी तो मैंने पोएम सुना दी, आप खुश हैं ना? नहीं, मगर अभी तो पूरी सुनाई तो खुश है ना आप? ठीक, ऐसे ही पूरी दोबारा सुनाऊंगा. नहीं तो वो खुश है मगर कहाँ है और उठ मेरी जान, मेरे साथ ही चलना है तुझे, ज़िंदगी जहद में है सब्र के काबू में नहीं, नब्ज़ हस्ती का लहू कांपते आंसू में नहीं, उड़ने खुलने में है निखत ख़मे गेसू में नहीं, जन्नत एक और है जो मर्द के पहलू में नहीं, उसकी आज़ाद रविश पर भी मचलना है तुझे. उठ मेरी जान, मेरे साथ ही चलना है तुझे. गोशे गोशे में सुलगती है चिता तेरे लिए, फ़र्ज का भेद बदलती है क़ज़ा तेरे लिए, क़ैर है तेरी हर एक नरमदा तेरे लिए, ज़हर ही ज़हर है दुनिया की हवा तेरे लिए, रुत बदल डाल अगर फूल ना फलना है तुझे, उठ मेरी जान मेरे साथ ही चलना है तुझे। हाँ, कदर अब तक तेरी तारीख ने जानी ही नहीं, तुझ में शोले भी हैं बस अश्क फिशानी ही नहीं, तू हकीकत भी है दिलचस्प कहानी ही नहीं, तेरी हस्ती भी है एक चीज़ जवानी ही नहीं, अपनी तारीख का उन्वान बदलना है तुझे, उठ मेरी जान मेरे साथ ही चलना है तुझे। तू फलातून और रस्तू है तो ज़ोरा परमी, तेरे कब्ज़े में है गर्दूं तेरी ठोकर में ज़मीं, हाँ उठा जल्द उठा पाए मुक़द्दर से जमी, मैं भी रुकने का नहीं वक्त भी रुकने का नहीं, लड़खड़ाएगी कहाँ तक कि संभलना है तुझे, उठ मेरी जान मेरे साथ ही चलना है तुझे।
क्या बात, क्या बात। And this was written, mind you, in the early 40s. I think the poem was written in 1942 at a time when it was believed that it was for the woman to stay at home and look after the kitchen and the children while the man went out and earned a living. And it was at that time that Kaifi Sahab wrote this poem.
Would you want to recite something of Jan Nisar Sahab?
Yes, I think we'll take something very small. So we'll take the qatat first. So what is ये तो अब्बा की है.
Now, qatat, there must be some people here, I'm sure, that who are unfamiliar with this word. Qatat is a stanza. It is just 4 lines and that is complete in itself. So there are few qatat, few stanzas which have nothing to do with each other. They are complete in themselves.
तो मैं जो आपसे कह रही थी ना कि इनकी जो ऑब्जर्वेशन है, इनकी जो इमेजरी है अख्तर साहब की, यू फाइंड इट प्लेंटी ओवर हियर। तो मैं इसमें से कुछ हिस्से पढ़ूंगी और जब मैं सुना दूंगी तो मैं चाहूँगी कि आप उसका अंग्रेज़ी सुना दें।
कर सकती है आप कि एक कथा पढ़े, कथा तो कंप्लीट हो जाता है, फिर ये ट्रांसलेशन पढ़ देंगे।
वही हुस्न का इत्र, जिस्म का संदल, आरज़ों के गुलाब, जुल्फ़ का ऊद, बाज़ औक़ात सोचता हूँ मैं, एक खुशबू है सिर्फ तेरा वजूद।
Your beauty redolent of attar, your body of sandalwood, those cheeks of rose, the earthy scent in your air, in your hair. Ever so often when I think of you, it is as of a heady perfume in the air.
अब्र में छुप गया है आधा चांद, अब्र में छुप गया है आधा चांद, चांदनी छन रही है शाखों से, जैसे खिड़की का एक पट खोले, झांकता हो कोई सलाखों से।
Untranslatable. A half moon hides in the clouds, through the boughs a straining of moonbeams.
Beautiful, Sumantra, beautiful.
It is as if someone prizing open a window peers in through the bars and gleams.
Beautiful. यादें माजी में यूं ख्याल तेरा डाल देता है दिल में एक हलचल, दौड़ते में किसी हसीना का जैसे आ जाए पाँव में आंचल।
Thinking of the past brings up your memory in such a way that stirs the heartbeat. It is as if a maiden running fast is stripped by a scarf caught in her feet.
वाह, यूं दिल की फ़ज़ा में खेलते हैं रह रह के उम्मीद के उजाले, यूं दिल की फ़ज़ा में खेलते हैं रह रह के उम्मीद के उजाले, छुप छुप के कोई शरीर लड़की आईने का अक्स जैसे डाले। Beautiful.
In the inscape of my heart, a play of light. Rays of hope enter, brighten, and then pass. Hiding herself, she teases me thus, flashing reflections in a mirrored glass.
Beautiful. नामुरादी के बाद बेतलबी, अब है ऐसा सुकून जीने में। नामुरादी के बाद बेतलबी, अब है ऐसा सुकून जीने में, जैसे दरिया में हाथ लटकाए सो गया हो कोई सफीने में।
After disillusionment comes indifference. Finally in life, a peace that is deep. As if dangling one's hand in flowing water, while on a boat, one is lulled to sleep.
Beautiful. Now you know what I meant.
I come to the close of this session. And एक सवाल जो मेरे जहन में कई सालों से रहा है, मुझे आज मौका मिल रहा है आपसे पूछने का, वो ये है कि आफरीन जो आपने लिखा था, वो कई लोग कहते हैं कि वो कलकत्ता में लिखा गया था रास्ते पर, चौरंगी पे. Is that true?
Yes, there is some truth in it. And I don't know why sometimes you don't only remember where you have written and you remember the exact place, and while I was in a moving car.
तो वो एग्जैक्ट लोकेशन कौन सी थी?
वो लोकेशन ये थी जहाँ ये आपका बहुत बड़ा ग्रैंड होटल है ना, तो वहाँ एक बहुत बड़ा सामने पार्क सा है और उसमें रोड्स आती हैं, देन यू गो अराउंड द पार्क टू रीच द होटल. तो वो मेरी कार जो है, आई वॉज इन अ कार एंड सिटिंग के इसको मुझे देना है, कुछ इस तरह का गीत क्या होना चाहिए. And these 4 lines came to my mind as the car was coming on the main road. I exactly remember this spot.
होटल के अंदर?
नहीं, मेन रोड पे आई, जब फ्रॉम द लेन ऑन दैट रोड. जो
वो कौन सी चंद लाइन थी?
वो थी हुस्न जाना की तारीफ मुमकिन नहीं, आफरी 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 आफरी, तू भी देखे अगर तो कहे हम नशी, आफरी आफरी आफरी. This started in Calcutta, that's for sure. I have no memory who inspired it, but I wrote it there, that's for sure.
Thank you very much for this session. Now we leave the floor open for questions.
I just want to thank on behalf of everyone for this wonderful session, this morning. And I had one question for Shabana ji, and you said that you were often the first audience for Kaifi Saab's poems. He would come to you, and so when you were growing up in such kind of a poetic environment, how is it that I want to know if you thought of ever writing poems yourself.
I was satisfied by being the inspiration. I didn't have to try writing poetry.
And just a small request, very small request, if time allows, can you please read Ek Mulaqat? No.
Ek lamha.
Ek lamha. Please, that would be very thankful.
जिंदगी नाम है कुछ लम्हों का. I must set the क्या कहना चाहिए उसका जो atmosphere में ये होता था, backdrop for it. This was something that I used to watch happening between my parents every single day. होता ये था कि mommy would get up early in the morning, she would bathe, she would wear this fresh cotton sari. Then there were these parijat फूल जो हमारे lawn में गिरे हुए होते थे, उनको लेकर she would put them in a wicker basket, and then the trolley would come with tea. It was a big ceremony in the house, and my father would come and sit opposite her. And they barely spoke at that time, but it was a moment of complete togetherness where the children knew almost by a process of osmosis that this was between them and this is a time that we need to leave it. So Kaifi says about it that unki zindagi mein, my mother says कि सबसे पुरसुकून लम्हे होते थे. तो उन्होंने उसका एक लम्हा, जिंदगी नाम है कुछ लम्हों का और उनमें भी वही एक लम्हा जिसमें दो बोलती आँखें चाय की प्याली से जब उठें तो दिल में डूबें, डूब के दिल में कहें आज तुम कुछ न कहो, आज मैं कुछ न कहूँ, बस यूं ही बैठे रहो हाथ में हाथ लिए, गर्मी जज्बात लिए. और गर्मी जज्बात लिए तुम पढ़ रहे हो उसका कौन जाने कि इसी लम्हे में दूर पर्वत पे कहीं बर्फ़ पिघलने ही लगे. थैंक यू. ये शायर लोग इसी तरह से फंसाते हैं अपनी बीवियों को.
Any other questions?
गुड मॉर्निंग जावेद सर, गुड मॉर्निंग शबाना मैम. मैं पिछले महीने रेख्ता में भी गया था, वहाँ आपको देखने का मौका मिला, कल आपका ऑटोग्राफ लेने का मौका मिला.
Can you come to the question?
Yes, I'm trying. Now, the thing is that कल भी मेरे पास सवाल था बट हाथ उठाने की हिम्मत नहीं हुई। ये हाथ उठाने की हिम्मत लाने में मुझे एक रात लगी है। तो कैफ़ी आज़मी साहब के बारे में जब आप बात करते हैं तो उनके बारे में तो उनकी कई पोइट्री आपने पढ़ी, बट उनके गुजर जाने के बाद उनको डेडिकेट करके आपने एक पोएम लिखी थी, अजीब आदमी था वो। सर वो आप एक बार अगर सुना दें।
ये एक नज़्म जो मैंने कैफ़ी साहब को डेडिकेट की है उनके लिए, जैसा कि मैंने आपको बताया कि he lived his ideas, so that you will see in this poem.
But before he recites this, I must say that in spite of the fact that my father had been ill for a long time, his going away was very, very painful. Very painful for me personally, for my mother and for my brother. And then I remember I was in Parliament at that time, and just as I was leaving, Javed called me up and he said, "Ek nazm hui hai, sunogi," just like my father used to say. And when he recited this nazm to me, I cannot tell you how it healed me. And it healed the whole family because it took the essence of who my father was, and that's why I'm truly grateful to him for this poem.
अजीब आदमी था वो, मोहब्बतों का गीत था, बगावतों का राग था, कभी वो सिर्फ फूल था, कभी वो सिर्फ आग था। अजीब आदमी था वो मुफलिसों से कहता था कि दिन बदल भी सकते हैं, वो जाबिरों से कहता था तुम्हारे सर पे सोने के जो ताज हैं कभी पिघल भी सकते हैं।
क्या बात है।
वो
हवाओं से वो कहता था,
हवाओं से वो कहता था मैं तुमको मोड़ सकता हूँ, सहूलतों से कहता था मैं तुमको छोड़ सकता हूँ, वो ज़िंदगी से कहता था मैं तुमको मोड़ सकता हूँ, वो आरज़ू से कहता था कि तुझको सच करूँगा मैं, तू चाहे जितनी दूर भी बना ले अपनी मंजिलें, कभी नहीं थकूँगा मैं, वो ज़िंदगी से कहता था कि तुझको मैं सजाऊँगा, तू मुझसे चांद मांग ले मैं चांद लेके आऊँगा।
क्या बात।
वो आदमी से कहता था कि आदमी से प्यार कर, उजड़ रही है ये ज़मीं कुछ इसका आप सिंगार कर। अजीब आदमी था वो ज़िंदगी के सारे गम, हर एक दुख, हर एक सितम से कहता था मैं तुमसे जीत जाऊंगा, कि तुमको तो मिटा ही देगा एक रोज़ आदमी, भुला ही देगा ये जहां, मेरी अलग है दास्तां। वो आंखें जिनमें ख्वाब है, वो दिल है जिनमें धड़कने, वो बाजू जिनमें है शकत, रहूँगा उनके दरमियाँ कि जब मैं बीत जाऊँगा। अजीब आदमी था वो।
क्या बात है। वाह वाह। Thank you.
I'm sorry I'm unable to get up. I've come
don't worry.
here with a fractured knee, and for me it's poetic that I'm here with this. Now I have a question for all three of you. One question for each of you. Javed Sahab, you had mentioned about मंदी आँच में पकी हुई शायरी. तो मुझे लगता है कि अब मैं हर शायरी जब मैं देखूंगी मुझे मन में आएगा कि ये मंदी आँच में पकी हुई है कि तेज़ आँच में पकी हुई है, तो उसे कैसे पहचानें? तो दैट इज़ माई क्वेश्चन फॉर यू. एंड सुमंत्रा साहब, when you are translating, are there moments where you feel, oh God, this is so beautiful, how do I translate it? And Shabana ji, for you, one question that you had mentioned about the female adulation that your husband gets. So especially in your younger years, did it fill you with a sense of pride that you may be the inspiration behind it, or did it make you feel insecure? How was it? Thank you.
I didn't believe for a moment that I was an inspiration. That's just a witty sentence to say at all. But I was just brought up with so much love, both from my parents, that I grew up a very secure and happy child.
आपने पूछा कि ये धीमी आंच में और ज़्यादा भड़कती हुई आग में जो शायरी है उसे पहचाने कैसे? आप पहचान लेंगे। आप बांसुरी में और सेक्सोफोन की आवाज़ में फ़र्क महसूस कर लेती हैं।
क्या बात, क्या बात है।
दोनों साज हैं और दोनों बहुत अच्छे साज हैं, बस फिर क्या है।
I think I'd like to answer, since this is a poetic gathering, I'd like to answer your question with a poem. But I'll have to open my phone and then I'll read it out. It's a poem I wrote on translation in English. And I think that will answer your question. It certainly helped answer some of mine. I just have to find it. Give me a moment, because this phone is now starting. Because I can't do better than to read that out. Because I thought about what you were saying. Every translator, I think, has to. And if I can find it, this is what came to me.
Meanwhile, आप एक क्वेश्चन कर लीजिए तो ये जल्दी ढूंढने में नर्वस नहीं होंगे. He'll take his own time.
Hello. I mean, I am very nervous right now to ask you or even talk to you. But I mean, I have been observing you for a long time, and both of you, Javed Sahab and Shabana ma'am, I would say, both of you being from the same legacy, living together for so many years, has poetry somehow helped in your relationship, or somehow like कुछ होते हैं ना ऐसे दिन कि हमारे दिन ठीक नहीं जाते हैं. On those days, has poetry helped you better as a couple?
Well, the answer is yes and no. I'll tell you why. Not that when Shabana was worried about where she has lost her keys, I started reading a poem to her. It didn't happen. Or when I was nervous that the song that I had to write, I have not, and I have to give the song in the evening, she had recited a poem. No. But the fact is that since you are influenced by same sources, then you develop same values, same morality, same what you call sanskar, and that helps. If you and your partner have basic same values, basic values are the same, then life becomes easy. You will differ every day, that's for sure. कोई बेकार की बातों पे आपकी ओपिनियन हमेशा होगी. ख़ास तौर से हम एक घर बना रहे थे तो वी हैड ऑलमोस्ट रीच डिवोर्स, तो समहाउ वी केम बैक. तो वो जब घर में है कि भाई वॉल का क्या कलर हो, सोफ़ा कहाँ रखा हो, फ्लोर में कौन सा पत्थर लगना चाहिए, ये बहुत सीरियस इश्यूज़ है और ये मतलब दे कैन डैमेज एनी रिलेशनशिप. तो वो ज़रूर है, लेकिन ये कि जहाँ तक जब तक आपकी बेसिक वैल्यूज़ कॉमन हैं तो आई थिंक एवरीथिंग कैन बी एब्जॉर्ब्ड.
Are you still interested in the answer?
Yes, we all are.
So this is something that happened because Javed Sahab and I had a morning of Urdu poems by him and translations of his poems by me. And so this poem came as a result of that experience. And it's really about my attitude to translation. Do your poems feel stripped of their essence when I dress them in my words? Or instead do they, like migratory birds, take flight, travel day and night to nest elsewhere, and live for a while under a different dispensation, in a different style?
Beautiful.
Does the slant of the sun there touch them with the same warmth? Wow. Does the change in weather make them puff up their feathers and strut about and sing? Do their voices soar above the din? And does the occasional bird lover thrill to find them trilling in their midst? Or do they only please the ornithologist? Who can know? Who can say? Some reach where they want to go, others perish along the way. Those who survive seem to do so happily. But then one day, these birds, unlike words, miss their homeland and fly away. Translations, on the other hand, stay.
Beautiful. It is absolutely stunning, Sumantra. It's beautiful.
So that's what I think about translation.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Can we invite the last question?
I'm Sandeep. Shabana ji, it's a guarantee that I will not get another opportunity, so I'm going to ask for something a bit too much, a bit out of place. Huzaffar Ali ki film Anjuman, Shahriyar ke geet, you sang 4 beautiful songs, Khayyam Saab ka sangeet. If you could sing one of them.
उससे ज़्यादा टेरिफाइंग बात आप मुझसे कह नहीं सकते थे. अभी मैंने एक माहौल बनाया, एक समा बनाया, ये लोग मुझसे काफ़ी खुश हैं. मैं नहीं चाहती हूँ कि वो लोग रोते हुए जाएं, तो प्लीज़ आप मुझे माफ़ कर दें.
अच्छा ठीक प्रोज में. Thank you.
Okay, just the last question, yours. Okay.
No, why last question? There are people who want to ask
no, I
questions.
thought we were
रहने
encroaching
दो.
on your
Of
time.
course, they're dying to ask questions.
जावेद साहब सेट में
कहाँ है आप?
गुड मॉर्निंग जावेद सर. गुड मॉर्निंग मैम. सर रिसेंटली मैंने उर्दू में लिखना और पढ़ना चालू किया है.
बहुत खूब.
तो
अब आपने चालू मत कीजिए, शुरू कीजिए.
शुरू किया है. तो एज फर्स्टली सर सेड कि मतलब उर्दू पोइट्री एंड उर्दू लिटरेचर, मतलब सर वो तो कभी होगा नहीं सर. आपकी इजाज़त होगी तो मैं आपको कुछ सुनाना, एकदम छोटा सा शेर आपका, उसमें फीडबैक लेना चाहूँगा.
मैं दे दूंगा, याद रखना.
चलेगा सर, एकदम सच बोलिएगा.
ओके.
कुछ अल्फाज है, इरशाद करने की इजाज़त दीजिए. सुना है तकलीफ़ तो बहुत है आपको, तकल्लुफ़ हमसे बात कीजिए. हम खुले बाज़ार में ना जता पाए तो क्या, एक लम्हा करके बस ज़िंदगी भर इस शायर का साथ दीजिए. दिल लगा के दिल के दरबार पर आके यूँ फरमाइश तो कीजिए. आपके मन में हमारे लिए क्या है, हमें पेश तो कीजिए. आप तारों के शौकीन हैं तो हम आपके लिए चांद ले आएंगे. आप मुस्कुराकर एक बार ख्वाहिश तो कीजिए.
Very sweet, very sweet.
देखिए, इससे मुझे पता चला कि आप बहुत शौक़ भी है आपको लिखने का, और आप में इमोशन भी है, पैशन भी है. लेकिन मैं आपको ये राय दूँगा, और सिर्फ आपको नहीं, मैं सारी आपकी उम्र के बच्चों को ये राय देता हूँ कि यू नीड सम इनटेक बिफोर द आउटपुट. आप पहले पोइट्री पढ़िए और कई साल तक पोइट्री पढ़ते रहिए. हर तरह की बड़े बड़े पोइट जो पैदा हुए दुनिया में, जिन्होंने अपनी पोइट्री, अब वहाँ से मत शुरू कर दीजिए गालिब से. जैसे अगर मैं इंग्लिश सीखना चाहूँ, आई कांट स्टार्ट विद शेक्सपियर, तो मैं तो कुछ समझ में नहीं आएगा मेरे. आप कंटेम्प्रेरी यंग पोइट जो है, या 20th सेंचुरी, लेट 20th सेंचुरी के जो पोइट्स हैं, जो सिंपल लैंग्वेज में लिखते हैं, इट्स नॉट वेरी चेस्ट हैवी लैंग्वेज, उनकी शायरी पढ़िए.
आप अपनी ही बात बताएं
जी.
आप यंग उम्र में आपने कितने कलाम मेमोराइज कर दिए थे?
सर वो दूसरा ज़माना था, अब दूसरा ज़माना है. अभी ज़िंदगी बहुत तेज़ चल रही है, तब ज़रा आहिस्ता चलती थी. तो आप बहुत पढ़िए. दैट विल टीच यू टू थिंग्स, यूसेज ऑफ वर्ड्स, मीटरिंग, वेटेज, फोनेटिक्स. ये सब धीरे धीरे जो अच्छे पोइट्स को आप पढ़ते रहेंगे तो आपको पता चले. यू डेफिनेटली हैव लॉट ऑफ पैशन, आई कैन सी दैट, बट यू हैव येट टू लर्न समथिंग अबाउट द टेक्निक ऑल्सो, क्राफ्ट.
थैंक यू सर. थैंक यू सर.
But congratulations for trying.
थैंक यू मैम.
With a lot of respect, may I request you to share one compliment your parents gave you each, which stayed with you. Something which जो आपके वालिदैन ने आपके बारे में कहा, respective or which really made you feel so happy. Something very personal. Generally अपनी तारीफ़ में कोई बताना नहीं चाहता ये बात, but बहुत इच्छा है कि आपके मुँह से सुनूं. Something which your parents have told, genuinely complimented you about.
I can't remember.
देखिए, my mother died the day I became 8. Next day she died. But I know a lot about her and what she felt for me and what was her opinion and so on and so forth, which is very flattering. Because the letters that she had written to her husband, my father, are many, and they are published in a form of 2 books.
Wow.
इसलिए कि they were married for 9 years, and in those 9 years, most of the time they were not together because of one reason or the other. They were in different cities. So every day she used to write a letter to him. उसमें ज़ाहिर है कि बच्चों का भी बहुत जिक्र होता था, besides so many other things. तो उसमें जो है, मतलब जो भी उन्होंने मेरे बारे में लिखा है वो एक्सेप्शनली फ्लैटरिंग है. तो अब वो सुनाने में मुझे शर्म आएगी, लेकिन आपने क्योंकि इंसिस्ट किया है तो बहुत ही रिलेक्टेंटली मैं आपको बता देता हूँ कि वेरी रिलेक्टेंटली. तो
because I think it's such a special moment for a child to be appreciated by their parent, and it's a very personal thing. इस बारे में कोई जनरली बात नहीं करते हैं, इसलिए बहुत हम्बली आपसे रिक्वेस्ट.
नहीं, मैंने मेरी भी ह्यूमिलिटी मुझे इजाज़त नहीं दे रही है, लेकिन since you are insisting.
बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद.
She has written, perhaps I was 5 years old when she wrote that I was reciting poetry to some girls, my students, जिसमें एक word का repetition था. And he said that he was sitting there, 5 years old child, and he said, this poem resembles my father's poem where he said, Jaga kalam, jagi kitab, jaga this, jaga that. This sounds exactly like that. So she said that a 5-year-old child could notice this, and so many people tell me that he is exceptionally intelligent. I don't know whether they really mean it or they are just trying to make me happy. But I think they meant it.
Of course.
No, but why don't you also say the ulat? When she said कि बहुत सारी बातें बनाता है और अमल में बिल्कुल.
हाँ, ये भी उन्होंने अपने एक दोस्त को लिखा कि जादू के बारे में बता दूं कि बहुत बातूनी है, बेहद बातें करता है, लेकिन प्रैक्टिकल बिल्कुल नहीं है.
प्रैक्टिकल बिल्कुल नहीं, प्रैक्टिकल में सिफर
है ये लिख. तो ये बात लिखी थी 6-7 साल की उम्र, लेकिन वो आज तक सही है. मगर जो सबसे मेरी बात सही, मेरी आंट जिन्होंने मुझे पाला आफ्टर द 8 years, उन्होंने मुझसे हमेशा कहती थी, बेटा तुम जिंदगी में कुछ नहीं करोगे, सिर्फ बातें बनाओगे. एंड शी वाज सो राइट. वेदर राइटिंग अ सॉन्ग और राइटिंग डायलॉग, और
उन बातों का असर इतना है कि आप उसका जादू आज भी देख रहे हैं.
अब ये मेरी आंट रही नहीं, वरना मैं जाके बताता हूँ. आप कुछ पूछ रही थी.
शबाना जी,
प्लीज इनको दे दीजिए
आपका कॉम्प्लीमेंट.
वो उन्हें याद नहीं है. अरे उन्हें मेरे कॉम्प्लीमेंट नहीं याद रहते, अपने पेरेंट्स के कहाँ याद रहेंगे, वो तो अभी अभी होते हैं. जी.
गुड मॉर्निंग सर. गुड मॉर्निंग मैम, ऑल ऑफ यू. माय क्वेश्चन टू यू इज, माय फर्स्ट अंडरस्टैंडिंग इज यू आर द कॉमन पर्सन's पोएट. हम लोगों ने आपसे सीखा है कि पोइट्री क्या हो सकता है हिंदी. माई हिंदी इज़ बैड बट स्टिल वी टू लव इट. इवन टुडे आई डिडंट अंडरस्टैंड मैनी थिंग्स बट येट आई अप्रिशिएट इट. बट पर्सनली सर, how do you relate yourself as a poet, as a daughter's father, as a son's father, as a lover's or a spouse's husband, or as your parents' child? As a poet, what is your take? What's the role that comes prominent to you?
It's a very tragic story, but I'll tell you. You know, when I was in my school or college, in school when I was in Lucknow, everybody say, आपको मालूम है ये मजाज का नेव्यू है. तो मजाज was the star that time. ये मजाज का नेव्यू. Then I came to Bhopal, did my college from there. That was a place where my father had taught for some years, and he had a lot of fans. ये जान निसार अख्तर के बेटे हैं. चलिए साहब, वहाँ से मैं निकला आया, बड़ी पिक्चर शोले दीवार सब लिखी. अब जनाब शबाना जी मेरी लाइफ में आ गई. अरे भाई वो देखिए वो शबाना आज़मी के हस्बैंड है. उससे फिर मैं निकला, मैंने बहुत सुपर हिट गाने लिखे और फिर अपना कुछ नाम बनाया था कि अब ये हो गया है, ये जोया एंड फरहान फादर. तो मेरी तो सारी ज़िंदगी इसमें ट्रेजेडी में कटी है. क्या बताऊँ मैं आपको. अभी मैं होता हूँ एयरपोर्ट पे तो 3-4 या होटल लॉबी में तो 3-4-5 अर्ली 20s और लेट टीन में लड़कियाँ भागती हुई मेरे पास एक्साइटेड आती हैं. तो आई फॉर अ सेकेंड आई फील कि नहीं, अभी भी ऐसा नहीं है कि सब ख़त्म हो गया. तो देन से आप फरहान से कितना रिजेंबल करते हैं. यू लुक एग्जैक्टली लाइक फरहान. तो मैं कहता हूँ बेटा तुम तो अभी बोल रही हो, मैं तो 4 साल का था तब से लोग ये कह रहे हैं बिल्कुल फरहान जैसा लगता है.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
There's a young lady in black over there.
How do I encourage young kids, like 7-8-year-olds, to love poetry, fall in love with poetry? Small kids.
Children don't do what you tell them to do. They do what you do. You start loving poetry. You read poetry. You go to Kavi Sammelans and Mushawarat. You invite poets and listen to their poetry. You elders of the family. The children get interested.
Yes, that girl in the green, please.
Adab. I bring best wishes from Bangladesh.
Oh, wonderful.
And
Thank
it
you.
is a feast for me to see this beautiful discussion and listened to the beautiful poem. I remember Shabana ji coming to Bangladesh and she read Ek Chithi Pyar Bhari. And today, both of you and all of you have stirred my soul, swept my heart, and I bring best wishes, and that's all I wanted to say.
Thank
you
Thank you very much.
And we would
please
like to have
convey
you.
our love to Bangladesh
But
also.
I must tell you one thing. Please sit down. That Shabana's father and my father were two poets who wrote powerful poems when Bangladesh became a reality. And in the honor of that new nation, one poem was from her father and another was from my father. And these poems are in this selection, Bangladesh, there.
Thank you very much. Ji, now we have to, the gentleman in the blue, yeah.
ये सिंहासन तो कुछ सालों में खाली हो जाएगा, हालांकि हमारे आपकी सेहत के लिए बहुत दुआ है। तो आप लोग कुछ ऐसा कर रहे हैं कि ये आगे जो पीढ़ी है उसको कुछ आप तराश रहे हैं, कुछ लोगों को आप अपने छत्र छाया में लेके काम कर रहे हैं, या कुछ का नाम आप बता सकते हैं जिनको हम पढ़ना चालू करें अभी से?
जी जी,
तो अच्छा रहेगा।
फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल लेट मी मोर्न ओवर माय डेथ एंड then I'll answer your question. हाँ बिल्कुल बिल्कुल। There are a lot of young people on both the sides of the borders, in India and in Pakistan, young boys. Some of them are perhaps in their late teens, as young as that. And they are doing great poetry. Actually, when I listen to their poetry on YouTube, I get inspired. They don't need me to inspire them. They are inspired people. This generation is an inspired generation. Chalo bhai.
But Rekhta padhe Rekhta. Rekhta has many poems, and they are translated, and they are in the Hindi lipi, and they're in Roman.
Where are the
it's really become a movement. So I would suggest कि आप रेख्ता ज़रूर उसको follow करिए. Two more questions. We have to go to another series.
Hi, this is Shayoni. Javed Saab.
Where are you? Acha, okay. Chalo.
Good morning, everybody on the stage. I'm a little nervous, so.
So am I. Don't worry.
Yeah. So, first of all, welcome to our city, and I just wanted to say that yes, I know all ladies and everybody probably is a big fan of Javed sir, but Shabana ma'am, there are too many people who are just floored with you as well. I'm very humbled to share my birthday with you. I totally showed
with her.
Happy
With
birthday
her.
with her. 18 September.
Okay.
Okay, so my question is to Sumantra sir. First of all, I love your diction and pronunciation. It's music to the ears as well. My question is, when you translate, what is your process of that language migration? What I mean to say is, I feel sometimes in certain words in Urdu or in another language, or say in Bengali, the equivalents are not available. For instance, you mentioned tripping on the archal. I just think that, yeah, in Urdu, tripping on the archal, but then it was translated into a scarf, which is not as long as the archal. So I feel that somewhere that tripping, that idea is lost. When we say archal pe
absolutely.
That, that idea that flows
Don't
in our
humiliate
mind,
me
right?
anymore.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Everybody's understood.
Yeah, the picturesque. So, do you think sometimes that it falls
No, absolutely.
within
I
those
think the
gaps?
big
What is your
issue,
process to
the
fill
big
that?
issue is the fact that a lot of it is untranslatable because it comes from a context and from centuries of usage as well. Words are not individual things. They have contexts, they have relations like human beings, they have parents, they have friends, and those are different in different languages, to start with. The other thing is that very often you get trapped by a wrongness of grammar, or you get trapped by something that is very common in trying to translate, which is to invert usage, which is not done in English. So instead of saying, I'm going there, you'll say, there I will be going. So because you want to rhyme something with something else. So those are the big problems. The problem is how to keep the poem in English still looking, sounding, feeling like a poem. You see, what happens very often, to give you another kind of image, is that when translators translate, very often what they give you is the recipe for the original dish. So they tell you there is so much rhyme, please use a little bit of alliteration, please use. What you need to do is cook a new dish, which has its own smell, but it has to have its own taste, and it has to feel like you're eating something. You're not reading a recipe.
So do you think a new text is born with that translation?
Absolutely, it is born, and whether it is deformed or whether it is a healthy child is luck of the draw very often, and very often depends on what the original was, what the parents were.
Hello everyone. I would like to share something really close to my heart. बहुत लोगों को मालूम नहीं है सहरा क्या होता है. So आपके फादर ने, जावेद साहब, आपके फादर ने मेरे फादर का सहरा लिखा था in लखनऊ. That is for the निकाह का सहरा.
शादी कैसी चली?
बहुत अच्छी. And I've kept that सहरा 50 माशाल्लाह से 52 years, और मैंने वो सहरा अपने बेटे की शादी के लिए रखा है, which is very soon.
ठीक है, वो जो भी रॉयल्टी बनती है वो भेज दीजिएगा. No problem.
But most people don't know what सहरा is.
या वो एक शादी एक रस्म में अब तो कम हो गई है कि शादी में दूल्हा दुल्हन के लिए एक पोएम लिखी जाती है. वो उनको दे दीजिए फ़ोन सामने, जो यहाँ फ़ोन नहीं, सॉरी माइक.
थैंक यू. सो आई थिंक
हाँ, तो वो एक नज़्म होती थी, और जनरली उसका जो रदीफ़ यानी जो लास्ट वर्ड होता था वो सहरा ही होता था. कभी कभी नहीं भी होता था. आई डोंट नो ये सहरा में सहरा वर्ड बार बार इस्तेमाल किया गया है कि नहीं किया गया है. अच्छा जी, कहिए.
Hello, thanks. So my question might be a little critical for the last question, but my question was about how Indian English poetry versus Urdu poetry that we see, and they often occupy very different domains. So how do you think the poetic metaphor that English Indian poetry uses, which is often more prosaic, it's very direct, versus the kind of beauty that we see in Urdu poetry, how do you think both of them talk about change and social change in today's times?
First of all, may I correct you on a small point? You cannot club Hindi and English against Urdu. Actually, it is Urdu and Hindi against English. I'll tell you why. Because Urdu and Hindi are strange languages. There are no other example in the whole world where there are two languages that have same syntax, same grammar. It is not possible except for Urdu and Hindi. So they have same grammar, same syntax, and same advantages and disadvantages of their syntax. While English has different syntax. The problem is that English is conducive for prose. You can never write such crisp prose in Hindi or Urdu as you can do in English. Because the structure of language is such that the suspense of the sentence is revealed in the very last word. What are you doing? I am working. Where are you going? I am going home. The last word tells you everything. It is not so in our language. हमारा जो सस्पेंस ज़्यादा निकल भी गया, उसके बाद रहा हूँ जा रहे हैं कुछ रहता है. तो थोड़ा सा एक जैसे कि तुम कहाँ जा रहे हो, अब जा से समझ चुका आदमी, रहे हो आगे है. मैं अपने घर जा रहा हूँ, तो घर तक समझ गए हम, बात निकल आई, रहा हूँ भी है आगे. तो ये जो है स्ट्रक्चर है. तो हमारा ज़रा थोड़ा सा एक रिलैक्स्ड, थोड़ा सा वी आर नॉट इन एनी हरी टू बी सो क्रिस्प. वी टेक आवर ओन टाइम इन सेइंग थिंग्स. It is a handicap in prose. but it is a great advantage in poetry. Because in poetry, again, the last word will reveal the suspense and the line will remain crisp. तो उसमें जो lilt चाहिए, उसमें जो एक easy way going, वही नहीं, वो हमारी लैंग्वेज में है. अब आप ट्रांसलेट कर ही नहीं सकते हैं. शाम भी थी धुआं धुआं, हुस्न भी था उदास उदास, दिल को कई कहानियाँ, यहाँ तक भी आप ट्रांसलेट कर लेंगे, अब गड़बड़ शुरू होती है, विच इज़ अनट्रांसलेटेबल. दिल को कई कहानियाँ याद सी आके रह गई. ये मतलब याद भी नहीं आई, याद सी आई और रह गई. रह गई का क्या ट्रांसलेशन करोगे, कैसे करोगे? कर सकते हैं सर? नहीं, बिल्कुल. सो इन पोइट्री जो एक सॉफ्ट फोकस है, वो सॉफ्ट फोकस पोइट्री में काम आता है. प्रोज में वो हैंडीकैप हो जाता है. प्रोज में इंग्लिश प्रोज इज सो क्रिस्प, सो टू द पॉइंट. जो पंच लाइन इंग्लिश में आएगी वो हमारी लैंग्वेज में नहीं आ सकती, इसलिए कि वो लास्ट वर्ड ही बताएगा व्हाट द पर्सन इज सेइंग.
आपका शुक्रगुजार हूँ on behalf of the organizers, Mala, on behalf of you and her team. We thank you for attending this morning session. आपका शुक्रगुजार हैं हम for attending and gracing the occasion. शुक्रिया.
I'd like to thank everyone who turned up on a Tuesday morning after a long weekend for this. Thank you so much. And what can I say to Javed Saab, Shabana and Sumantra? Fabulous, fabulous morning. The festival called this the Morning with Poets. There was clearly, we thought it was about one poet and him talking about others, but clearly everyone was in a poetic mood today. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mudar. And most of all, thank you, Alkaji and Alka Jalan Foundation. It's really wonderful to be back at this beautiful, beautiful venue.
Thank you. Thank you, Malvika. Thank you, the Tata's team.
Very good. Just one more. There'll be a signing, so we could possibly just do it here if you all line up in a civilized manner. Okay, this is not the right. So if you let Javed Saab and the others go to the desk at the back, they can sign here. So we will take